Hello, we welcome you to today's Bible study of the Banking Blessings Ministry. Today we are going to look at the early years of Solomon as king of Israel. We remember in the last Bible study that David dealt with some people that wanted to lead a rebellion against him. He defeated them and appointed Solomon king of Israel. So today we're going to look at how Solomon solidified his position and some of the things he did to begin to make an impact as the king of Israel. We will learn that to establish his kingdom, Solomon first did a house cleaning. He removed from his kingdom, people that couldn't be trusted, or people that posed known threats to him or to his father at some point. Of course, he reorganized. He set up an administration that is quite different in some important ways from the administration that his father had in place, and he showed great respect and humility towards his father, and he recognized that the task of being king of Israel was not going to be a simple task. He was quite humble and respectful toward the task, but he wasn't afraid. He simply realized that it was going to be difficult. When God gave him the opportunity to ask for whatever he wanted, Solomon asked for a discerning heart so that he would be able to distinguish between right and wrong and be able to administer justice in being the king of Israel. Translated, he simply wanted to be an effective king of Israel. And that was the only thing he asked for. Of course, God was pleased and granted his request and granted him other things that he didn't ask for. Everything we're going to do today is in 1 Kings chapter 2 and chapter 3. We'll begin with David's final words to Solomon. When David realized that it was his time to go, time to sleep finally, he called his son Solomon. Solomon was already king of Israel at this point, had been made king and installed by David. So David went to him and prayed with him and told him, told him that he needs to remain strong in God. He needs to walk with God. He needs to know what God's requirements are. He needs to obey his laws and commandments. And that is the most important thing that he needs to never forget as king of Israel. Walk with God, know what the requirements are, know the laws and commandments, and obey the laws and commandments. Then, having told him that, he recalled his experience with his commander Joab. You remember we went through the relationship between David and Joab in a previous Bible study, where we found out that Joab, although an effective commander, tended to have his own mind and at times appeared disrespectful toward David. Most important, he committed two murders. He murdered two commanders, two people that could have been commander, maybe could have replaced him as commander or could have been a competition for him. One was Abner, the son of Ner, and then another one was Amasa. So his father told Solomon to remember this and said, look, Job did these things and was never punished by him He said Solomon should not let Joab die in peace. In other words, that he should punish Joab before his death, before he dies. Then he told about Barzillai, a man that was very kind to him during the time he ran away from Absalom. He said, "Oh, remember Barzillai, be kind to his children, because he was kind to me. He helped me a lot when I was on exile." Then he remembered Shimei, the Benjamite that rained curses at David when David was running away from Absalom. David had made a commitment not to punish Shimei, but he really didn't think that Shimei should get away with what he did. So he told Solomon and said, "You use your wisdom, but don't let Shimei die in peace." Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. 1 Kings chapter 2 from the NIV version, verse 1. When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon his son. "I'm about to go the way of all the earth," he said. "So be strong. Show yourself a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in his ways and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and requirements as written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go. And that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. Now you yourself know what Joab, son of Zeruiah, did to me, what he did to two commanders of Israel's armies, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime as if in battle, and with that blood stained the belt around his waist and the sandals of his feet. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. But show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who called down bitter curses on me the day I went to Mahanaim. When he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now do not consider him innocent. You are a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. Then David rested with his fathers and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron and 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. Well, so that was the first part of the first act of his being a king. His father talked to him, handed over things to him, and then he became king of Israel. Of course, David died, and now Solomon was alone as king of Israel. Well, the next thing that happened was his senior brother Adonijah went to Solomon's mother, and made a request that Solomon's mother go tell Solomon to give him Abishag as his wife. Abishag was the Shunammite woman, the young girl that they brought for David when David was very old, He took care of David in his old age, but David really didn't have any intimacy with him because he was too old at that time. So now that David has died, the next king, as it was the custom, the king inherits whatever the previous king had, including his wives. But Adonijah wanted Abishag, this youngest wife of David, to become his wife. Remember, Adonijah was the one that led the rebellion, and Solomon had forgiven him somewhat, telling him that if he was good, he would be forgiven, but if he wasn't good, he would die. So when Solomon received the request by Adonijah that his father's youngest wife should be given to him as wife, Solomon became annoyed. He wondered why Adonijah was still eyeing his kingdom. And then he said that, well, I think that brought up the whole issue of Adonijah leading a rebellion against his father. So he made a ruling there and then that Adonijah had to die. He gave order to Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, who was the commander closest to David at his death, and now is probably going to be the commander of Solomon. So he ordered Benaiah to execute Adonijah, and Benaiah carried out the sentence, so Adonijah was killed. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 16 to 18 and 21 to 25. 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 16. Now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me. You may make it, she said. So he continued, please ask King Solomon, he will not refuse you, to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. Very well, Bathsheba replied, I will speak to the king for you. So she said, let Abishag the Shunammite be given in marriage to your brother Adonijah. King Solomon answered his mother, why do you request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? You might as well request the kingdom for him. After all, he is my older brother. Yes, for him and for Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah. Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if Adonijah does not pay with his life for this request. And now, as surely as the Lord lives, he who has established me securely on the throne of my father David, and has founded a dynasty for me as he promised, Adonijah shall be put to death today. So King Solomon gave orders to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he struck down Adonijah, and he died. Well, next he turned his attention to Abiathar. Remember that when Adonijah declared himself king, Abiathar and Joab supported him. So now that Solomon had killed Adonijah for that crime, even though it was his request for their father's youngest wife that kind of rekindled the crime again in Solomon's mind. But now he thought about the people that led that rebellion against his father. Adonijah had been killed, so he turned to Abiathar, the priest. He said, Abiathar, you deserve to die because you supported Adonijah in the rebellion. But I will not kill you. You will be spared because you carried the ark of God before my father David, and you shared David's hardships. And this is true. Abiathar, remember Abiathar joined David after the massacre in Nob, when Saul killed all the priests of Nob. And this was at the beginning. That David wasn't king then. He was still running from Saul. So it was Abiathar the priest at that time joining David was one of the things that gave him more credibility, that made people more appreciative of what he represented. And Abiathar was with David from that point until this point where he was being tried for a crime. So yes, he shared David's hardships, and Solomon remembered this. Also, he remembered him for carrying the ark of God before his father. Because of that, he said Abiathar should leave the priesthood and go back to his farm. But he will be spared, he will not be killed. He actually deserved to die, but he will not be killed. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 26 and 27. Verse 26. To Abiathar the priest, the king said, "Go back to your fields in Anathoth. You deserve to die, but I will not put you to death now, because you carry the ark of the sovereign Lord before my father David, and shared all my father's hardships." So Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood of the Lord, fulfilling the word the Lord had spoken at Shiloh about the house of Eli. Then Solomon turned his attention to Joab, and he told Joab, in fact, Joab didn't wait to be told. When Joab realized that Adonijah had been killed and Abiathar had been removed from the priesthood, he knew he was in trouble. So he ran to the tent, to the sacred tent, and sort of went to the altar and grasped the horn of the altar. This was a way when somebody is running away from the king, doesn't have any place to go, symbolically he goes to the altar, and it's like running to God. So he went to the altar and stayed there and said he wasn't going to come down, that if they are going to kill him, they have to kill him there. Well, Solomon said, okay then, if you want to be killed at the altar, then you will be killed at the altar. So he sent Benaiah to go and kill Joab. And Benaiah did exactly that. He went and brought Joab down and killed him. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 31 to 34. Then the king commanded Benaiah, "Do as he says, strike him down and bury him, and so clear me and my father's house of the guilt of the innocent blood that Joab shed. The Lord will repay him for the blood he shed, because without the knowledge of my father David, he attacked 2 men and killed them with the sword. Both of them, Abner son of Ner, commander of Israel's army, and Amasa son of Jetha, commander of Judah's army, were better men and more upright than he. May the guilt of their blood rest on the head of Joab and his descendants forever. But on David and his descendants, his house and his throne, may there be the Lord's peace forever." So Benaiah son of Jehoiada went up and struck down Joab and killed him, and he was buried on his own land in the desert. Well, next Solomon turned to Shimei. Remember, his father told him about Joab and then told him about Shimei. So Joab was now killed, Shimei was left. He told Shimei that his life will be spared if on one condition, that he needs to stay in Jerusalem. He said, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and stay there. Don't ever leave Jerusalem. The day you leave Jerusalem, you will be killed." So essentially he was not house arrest, but city arrest. He was restricted to Jerusalem. He couldn't leave Jerusalem. But Shimei accepted it. He knew that he did something bad to David. He was expecting that something he might get punished, and this was a good deal for him. In fact, he deserved to die, but he was not going to be killed. So he built himself a house in Jerusalem and stayed there. But 3 years later, his slaves ran to Gath in Philistine territory, and he pursued them, which means he left Jerusalem. He went and got them and brought them back, but because he left Jerusalem, Solomon summoned him and he was executed. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 2, verses 36 to 37 and 41 to 46. Then the king sent for Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, but do not go anywhere else. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head." When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned, the king summoned Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord and warn you, on the day you leave to go anywhere else, you can be sure you will die? At that time you said to me, 'What you say is good, I will obey.' Why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord and obey the command I gave you?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your heart all the wrong you did to my father David. Now the Lord will repay you for your wrongdoing. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain secure before the Lord forever." Then the king gave the order to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down and killed him. The kingdom was now firmly established in Solomon's hands. Well, so Solomon has done his house cleaning. Then the next is for him to now set up his government and begin to rule Israel. We are not going to look at this in detail. There is a lot of information on that in 1 Kings chapter 2 verse 35 and chapter 4 verses 1 through 19. We're not going to read them because the section is long. But what happened was he made Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, the new commander-in-chief. Remember, this was the position Joab occupied throughout the reign of David. But Joab has been killed, and now Joab has been replaced by Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. Then he took Zadok. He appointed Zadok, the priest, as the chief priest in place of Abiathar. Then he appointed 12 district governors. This is one thing he did that is different from the way his father did things. He needed the kingdom needed supplies from the whole of Egypt, and instead of dealing with them directly, he appointed 12 district governors to help with collecting, each of them collecting supplies from his district. Each governor took care of 1 month of the year. So that way, each person was in charge of 1 month, and there are 12 of them in charge of 12 months, and that took care of the year. So they did the supply provisions to the king in monthly rotation. And this was one way he introduced efficiency in his government. But so we're not going to spend time on that. We need to spend some time and look at Solomon's interaction with God as he began to rule Israel. It is really here that we get our lesson for the day. God appeared to Solomon at Gibeon. Solomon had gone to Gibeon to make sacrifice. Gibeon was the highest point, the highest elevation in the land. So he had gone there to make sacrifice. And then God appeared to him and then told Solomon that he could ask for anything he wanted. Well, to respond to the request, Solomon started first by acknowledging that God was very kind to his father David because his father was faithful and righteous. And that it is that kindness, it is the continuation of that kindness that put him on the throne, that he is on the throne of Israel because God is kind to his father. Let us understand what is happening here is that Solomon is given credit. He said he is on the throne of Israel not because of what he did himself, not because of his own qualifications, but because of God's kindness to his father David. And that God was kind to his father because his father was a righteous man. So he was showing great respect to his father. He was showing humility towards his father. He was thanking God for his father and for himself. Thanking God for his father and recognizing that it is because of his father that he became the king of Israel was a great recognition, a great show of respect to his father. And it is true. It is God promised his father that he will raise his son to replace him. So Solomon, yes, was king because of in fulfillment of a promise that God made to David. But what is important is that Solomon himself recognized that, he acknowledged that before God. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 4 to 6. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 4. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place. And Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream. And God said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Solomon answered, "You have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day." So he acknowledged that he is there because of his father. Then he also acknowledged that being the king of Israel was not going to be easy for him. He said, how can I be king over these great people and numerous people? That is, he recognized that the Israelites were a great people. They were the people of God, and they were numerous. They were a very large number. They had grown to a very large number at this point. It's not that he was afraid to be king, but he recognized that they needed a great king. They needed an effective king. And he wants to be this effective king. He wants to be this great king. But he is concerned that he might be inadequate. So he is going to ask God to help. He recognized that he needed God in order to be an effective king for Israel. So what he asked God, remember he was told he could ask for anything he wanted. What he asked was for a discerning heart, so that he could distinguish between right and wrong, so that he will be able to see what is just, to be able to be a king that will administer justice to his people. An effective king, a king that is able to distinguish between right and wrong, and therefore be able to administer justice. And that is all he wanted. That's all he asked for. He didn't ask for anything else. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 7 to 9. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? Well, of course, God was pleased with Solomon's request. Solomon was given an opportunity to ask for anything he wanted, but all he asked for was wisdom. Give me a discerning heart so that I can govern effectively, govern your people effectively. So God was pleased and said, look, I gave you opportunity to ask for anything. You could have asked for long life and wealth for yourself, which is typical selfish type of demand. You could ask for the death of your enemies, but you didn't ask for any of these. So I'm going to give you what you asked. I'm going to give you wisdom, and your wisdom will surpass the wisdom of any known person, any person that has ever been born, and any person that will ever be born. Then I will also give you what you didn't ask for. I'm going to give you riches and honor. Your wealth will exceed the wealth of any other known person. And you will be highly respected among kings. So God promised Solomon the wisdom he asked for, and then the wealth and honor that he didn't ask for. Let us read about this in 1 Kings chapter 3. Verses 10 to 15. The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life. Then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then he gave a feast for all his court. Well, we've actually come to the end of the Bible passage, but let us look at what we learned. The first thing is that Solomon was very respectful of his father. He was very humble toward his father. He showed this by acknowledging to God that, hey, God was very kind to his father because his father was faithful and righteous, and that God made him king in fulfillment of a promise that God made to his father. So he gave credit to his father for his being a king. He recognized his father. He wants to be close to God like his father was, and he wants to be a good king like his father was. But he feared that he may be inadequate. He feared that he may not be able to fit into his father's shoes. So this is a child, or a man, really. He was king this time, so he's no longer a child. A man that was very respectful of his father and admired his father so much that all he wanted to be was to do as well as his father did. But he even feared he might not be, that he might not fit into his father's shoes. He might be inadequate. It's not that he thought. In fact, his desire was to do better than his father. But this respect for his father actually put him on a very good pedestal. Because that means he was going to take advantage, since he was so humble that he would take his time and learn what his father knew. Humility towards parents gives a child an opportunity to learn from the parents. It was this humility, I believe it was this humility that David saw in Solomon, and that's the reason he bypassed his senior brother Adonijah and made him king. Because he saw in him somebody that would be fit to be king, somebody that was just sponging off him, learning from him. Knowing that his father was a man of God, he wanted to be a man of God like his father. His father was a good king, he wanted to be a good king like his father. Because he admired his father and was humble towards his father. Another aspect of Solomon's humility was with respect to his task of being king of Israel. He welcomed it. He wanted to be king. He wanted to be a good king. He wanted to be an effective king. But he did not look at it as a mean task, a small thing. He said, oh yeah, I'm going to do it. After all, my father did it. No. He saw it as something that could be greater than him. He was humble towards his task. And because he was humble towards his task, he kept his eyes open. He looked at the task carefully to understand what he needed to do. He remembered what his father told him, that he had to walk with God. He had to be faithful to God. He had to know the commandments and he had to obey the commandments. So, his humility towards his task was the beginning of success. When you have a task, if you look over it, just look at it as, oh yeah, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. You may not do as well as you would have done. But if you look at your task respectfully, expecting that it's going to take hard work from you, expecting that there might be things you have not expected, that surprises, there will be surprises. If you have this much respect for your task, then you're going to pay attention to every detail. You are going to pay attention to everything that you are supposed to do. And you are likely to do it successfully. So Solomon's humility toward his task of being the king of Israel is a lesson for us in every task that we have. We are probably not going to be king of any country tomorrow, but every task you have deserves the same kind of attitude. You need to be humble towards your task. You need to recognize that your task can defeat you, but you don't want it to defeat you. So you want to pay attention to every detail. Well, when Solomon was given an opportunity to ask for something, his humility showed, his desire showed. All he wanted was to be a good king for the great people of Israel. He recognized that this is a great people, the people of God, and there is a large number that he needed to walk with God as his father advised him. So he prayed and said, give me the capability to be a good king, to be a great king for these great people. Now, being a good king for the people of Israel, since the people of Israel were the people of God, and it was God that appointed his father David, and it was God that appointed him after his father David. So God needed a good king for Israel, no doubt. So asking that he be made a good king, that he be given the capability to be a good king for Israel, is really asking that he be able to fulfill God's purpose for Israel. Well, why is this important? It's that, remember, God created us in his image to represent him in interactions among people. Now, he gave us wide-ranging authority to do anything we want to do, whatever it is, with only one condition, that everything you do must convey the image of God. In other words, everything you do must be something that advances God's purpose, something that fulfills God's will. If something fulfills God's will, then it is authorized. You have authority from God to do it. But if something does not fulfill his will, if something does not convey his image, then you don't have the authority to do it. The same way, if you ask for permission to do something, if you are praying for God to help you do something, if it is something that conveys the image of God to the people that will be affected, in other words, something that advances God's purpose, then what God said is he will honor that prayer. He will grant the prayer. In fact, Christ echoed this, as we see in the Gospel according to John chapter 14, verse 14. Christ said, "You can ask for anything in my name, and I will do it." You can ask for anything. Anything excludes nothing. But there is one condition. You must ask in his name. That means you must ask for something that is consistent with the purpose of God. Something that is consistent with God's will. That's what it means to ask in his name. So if you ask in my name, if you ask for something that will fulfill my purpose, then I will do it for you. So here, what Solomon has asked for is for capability to be a good king to Israel. In other words, he was asking to fulfill God's purpose for Israel. And of course, God told him immediately that he will do it. So whenever you pray for something, ask yourself, how will this fulfill God's purpose? How will this convey the image of God to the people that will be affected? Because God said, if it will convey his image, if it will fulfill his purpose, then he will do it for you. So a way to strengthen your faith that God will grant your prayer is to convince yourself that what you are asking for is something that will convey the image of God to people that will be affected. It is also a way to know what you should stay away from. If you evaluate a contemplated action and see that you cannot see how it conveys the image of God to people, then get away from it. Don't do it. Because God does not authorize you to do it. Ask for anything in my name, and I will do it. Solomon asked for something that satisfies that condition, and God did it for him. Well, we've come to the end of today's Bible study, and we thank all those that will participate in the Bible study anytime in the future, either by watching the video or by listening to the audio. We pray that you will hear something or see something that will make a positive impact on your life and bring you closer to God's purpose for your life. Thank you, and God bless you.